Imagine you're holding a cheap, slightly chunky plastic smartphone.
Right, just a totally normal-looking device.
Yeah, exactly. It's got a normal screen, a normal battery. It looks completely unremarkable.
You wouldn't look twice at it.
But then you pull to contact, you tap dial, and instantly, with absolutely zero lag, you were talking to a human colony on Mars.
Zero lag. Which is just, well, it's impossible under standard physics.
Right. I mean, there are no cell towers routing your call. There are no satellite dishes pointing up into the sky. And crucially, there is no 20-minute light speed delay.
Yeah, you just say hello, and they hear it that exact second.
And then you hang up and use that exact same device to stream a holographic video feed from a starship in the Andromeda Galaxy.
Yeah, as one does.
Right. Or maybe you use the processor inside it to crack the world's most secure encryption in half a second. Or you fold complex proteins in real time to cure a disease.
And you're doing all this on a standard battery.
Yes. And here is the real kicker, for the average person. You are doing all of this without a SIM card, without a Wi-Fi router, and without ever paying a monthly fee to a telecom provider ever again.
Because in the model of physics we are looking at today, the entire multi-trillion-dollar telecom industry simply does not need to exist. It's completely obsolete.
Welcome to our deep dive into the Nexus cell phone version 3 documentation.
A truly wild ride of a document.
Seriously, the author is George James Dukas, and our mission for this deep dive is to completely unpack this proposed device.
Yeah.
Because it claims it can shatter our fundamental understanding of physics, of telecommunications, and computing.
Yeah, all of it.
It's built on something called Transdimensional Unified Field Theory, or TDUFT. And it claims it can do all of these things: interplanetary calls, quantum computing, breaking physics as we know it, with a bill of materials that costs under $35.
Which is just the craziest part to me. What's fascinating here is that when you hear claims like instant calls to Mars, you naturally expect a philosophical treatise or, some highly speculative science fiction.
Right, like a pitch for a movie.
Exactly. But this document isn't that. It is a highly specific, rigorous engineering manual.
Yeah, it's dense.
It really is. It provides exact electrical schematics. It lists a line-by-line bill of materials using commercial, off-the-shelf components that you or I could go buy right now.
Today, from a standard electronic supplier.
Yeah, and it provides the testable mathematical equations to make it work. The author is explicitly trying to bridge the gap between abstract theoretical physics and the actual factory floor.
And that is exactly what we are going to explore. Because, to understand how a $35 piece of plastic and standard electronics can talk to Mars, we have to look at the hardware.
The physical components.
Right. When I first looked at the bill of materials, the BIACOM in this document, I honestly thought it was a joke.
It looks too simple.
It's so basic. If you've ever tinkered with electronics on your kitchen table, you know these parts.
They are entirely ubiquitous. There is no unobtainium here, no magical alien metals.
No. So we have an ESP32 microcontroller.
Very standard.
Yeah. Anyone who has built like a smart home device to automatically water their houseplants knows what an ESP32 is. It costs about $4.
Pennies, basically.
Then the document lists a Class D audio amplifier chip. That's about $1.
Right.
A standard 500 milliamp hour lithium polymer battery, literally the kind you'd find in a cheap smartwatch, for about $3.
And you can buy them in bulk.
Exactly. Add some basic micro-electromechanical microphones and speakers for $2. And then there's the processor, something called the S54 quantum processor, which the document prices at $15.
We will definitely get to that processor later because that's a whole other thing.
Oh, we will. But if you tally all that up and you scale it up to, say, 10,000 units, this entire device costs between $25 and $35 to manufacture. It would retail for like $99.
But the true disruption here doesn't come from the battery or the audio chip. It actually lies in the case itself.
The plastic shell.
Yeah. The document prices the physical casing of the phone at just $2. It specifies that it's meant to be 3D printed or injection molded out of a specific plastic called PEEK.
Polyether ether ketone, right?
Exactly. PEEK. Now, in a normal phone, the case is just a dumb shell. It holds the battery in place and stops the screen from shattering when you drop it.
Yeah, it's just a container.
Right. But in the Nexus, the case is the technology.
See, this is where I started scratching my head. Because the dimensions of this phone case are not determined by ergonomics.
No, not at all.
They aren't trying to make it fit nicely in your pocket or match a certain screen aspect ratio for watching videos. The dimensions are strictly determined by the golden ratio.
555.
Right. Roughly 1.618.
Yes. The width The height and the depth of this phone are in an exact non-negotiable ratio of 1 to 5 squared. So mathematically, that is roughly 1 to 1.618 to 2.618. And that precise geometric proportion is the secret to everything this device claims to do.
It's all in the shape.
Yes. Think about how modern smartphones work. You have a completely separate antenna, usually a complex fractal strip of metal hidden near the edge of the glass.
Right, usually tucked away somewhere.
And its entire job is to catch electromagnetic radio waves flying through the air, while the Nexus has no traditional antenna.
Wait, none at all.
None. The PEEK plastic case itself is the antenna. It is a solid-state resonator and a harmonic generator.
Okay, let's unpack this. A plastic antenna. How does a solid piece of PEEK plastic transmit anything?
So it acts as an acoustic and geometric resonator. The ESP32 chip we mentioned, it takes a tiny amount of power, just 1 watt from that Class D amplifier, and it drives a very specific electrical frequency directly into this plastic case.
Like it vibrates the plastic?
Essentially, yes. Specifically, it drives a 111.111 kilohertz square wave.
111 kilohertz. That is an incredibly specific number.
Very specific. The document refers to this as the D equals 5 eigenfrequency of the universe's velocity operator.
Wow, okay.
In the context of this theory, it is the fundamental native frequency of the universe's underlying lattice.
So if I'm getting this right, instead of building a massive multi-million-dollar radio dish to shout an electromagnetic wave across the vacuum of space, we are essentially carving a very specific plastic tuning fork,
Right.
shaping it to the golden ratio, and tapping it with a 1-watt electrical hammer.
That is a brilliant way to visualize it.
Yeah?
Yes. You are not trying to blast a brute force signal through the air. You are vibrating a geometry so perfectly that it resonates with the underlying pre-existing structure of reality itself.
That is wild.
And when that 111.111 kilohertz wave hits that golden ratio case, the case naturally auto-generates higher-order harmonic frequency.
Just by vibrating.
Just by its shape. Specifically, it generates prime number harmonics in the phi sequence. So the 7th, the 11th, the 13th, the 17th, and the 23rd harmonics.
And what do those harmonics do?
Those separate harmonic layers become your voice and data channels.
Okay, I hear that, but I have to push back a little. How does tapping a golden ratio tuning fork completely bypass the need for our current cell tower networks?
I know, it sounds crazy.
If you are listening to this, just think about what it takes right now to get a 5G signal in your own city. Companies like Verizon and AT&T spend billions of dollars.
Huge infrastructure.
Right. They lay fiber optic cables across the literal floors of oceans. They negotiate land rights. They stick these massive, ugly radio towers on every tall building they can find, all just to bounce signals around. Are you telling me a $2 piece of vibrating plastic just replaces a transatlantic fiber optic cable?
It replaces it because it abandons the very concept of signal travel.
What do you mean by that?
Traditional telecommunications, everything from a kid's walkie-talkie to a fiber optic cable relies on electromagnetic waves.
Yeah.
Radio waves, microwaves, pulses of light.
Right.
Those waves have to physically travel through space. They bounce off buildings. They get absorbed by rain. They degrade exponentially over distance.
Like when you drive through a tunnel and lose your signal.
Exactly. But most importantly, they are strictly limited by the speed of light.
Which is why communicating with things in space is so agonizingly slow. Like, if we have a rover on Mars and NASA sends it a command, it takes anywhere from 12 to 24 minutes for that signal to just get there, right?
Precisely. If you are on a traditional radio link and you say hello to a colony on Mars, you are waiting up to 48 minutes just to hear someone say hello back.
That makes a real-time phone call literally impossible.
Physically impossible under standard physics, yes. But the Nexus phone doesn't send a signal through space. It doesn't use the air in your room or the vacuum of the solar system as its medium.
Then what is it using?
It couples directly to what the author calls the eternal lattice.
The eternal lattice.
Yeah.
Okay. This is where we cross the Rubicon into transdimensional unified field theory.
Strap in.
Yeah. I really want to spend some time here because this is where the physics takes a hard left turn from everything we are taught in high school.
It is the bedrock of the entire document. In standard physics, Einsteinian physics, we view the universe as space-time. right? It's a fabric that can bend and warp, and things move around inside it.
Like a bowling ball on a trampoline. That's the classic example.
Right, but in TDUFT, the universe is not an empty box or a flexible trampoline. The universe is a pre-existing, infinite, and incredibly rigid grid.
Rigid.
And this grid is built entirely on the mathematical properties of the golden ratio phi.
But why phi specifically? Why not pi or, I don't know, just regular integers?
Because the decimal expansion of the golden ratio is entirely unique. It never repeats and it never ends.
Okay, so it's infinite.
Right. And if you use a non-repeating decimal as a foundation for a grid, it provides an infinite sequence of unique numbers. This means every single mathematical point in reality already has a permanent, mathematically unique address on this grid.
Which?
No 2 points in the entire universe share the same underlying mathematical signature.
So if I can try to picture this, it's like the universe is an infinite pre-built neighborhood. And before a single star or planet was even created, every single house in that neighborhood already had a unique zip code permanently installed.
That is exactly it, a pre-installed coordinate system. And in this theory, a coordinate on this lattice is called a Nexus tuple.
A Nexus tuple.
Yes. It is made of 4 specific parameters. I'll break them down quickly. First, you have D, which is the torsion layer or distance index. Think of this as defining how much time passes in the outside world when you access that specific spot.
Okay, so D is kind of like the depth of the coordinate.
Yes, depth is a good way to think of it. Second, you have M, which is the harmonic mode. These are those prime numbers we talked about generated by the plastic case, like 7, 11, or 13.
Ah, I see. So channel 7 could be your dedicated voice line, and channel 11 could be your data line.
Exactly. It's how the device separates streams of information so they don't get tangled. Third, you have a variable called p-will. Yeah. This is a binary switch, either a +1 or a -1, and it simply determines the forward or backward direction of the temporal phase.
Okay.
And finally, the fourth parameter is the dia0, which is an incredibly precise static phase offset.
So 4 numbers.
Yes. When you lock those 4 numbers together, you get an absolutely unique, unforgeable address in the fabric of the universe.
Which fundamentally changes how a user would interact with the phone.
Yeah.
I mean, if you open up the address book in this vNexus phone, you aren't looking at a list of 10-digit phone numbers assigned by a telecom company.
No area codes here.
Right. You were looking at a list of exact universal coordinates. Your friend isn't at 555-0199. They are at D equals 10 to the third, mode 7, phase offset 0 point whatever.
And when you hit dial to call your friend, you aren't sending a ping to a cell tower to ask a central switchboard to route your call. You're instructing the tiny ESP32 chip and that golden ratio plastic case to vibrate at that exact specific phi harmonic wave pattern. And this brings us to the most critical, just mind-bending concept in the document. Wave identity.
Wave identity. Yeah, the document spends pages on this, and it honestly took me 3 reads to fully grasp it. It claims that if 2 things vibrate identically, they become the same thing. Is that right?
Yes. In TDUFT, identity is not defined by physical location. It is defined by mathematical resonance.
Break that down for me.
Let's say your phone in New York generates a standing wave pattern, a specific Nexus tuple coordinate.
Okay.
And let's say your friend's phone in Australia generates that exact same standing wave pattern. The universe's lattice does not see 2 separate phones separated by 10,000 miles of Earth.
It doesn't.
No. The lattice only sees one mathematically identical wave. Therefore, according to the geometry of the universe, your phone and their phone literally occupy the same point in the lattice.
That is wildly profound. You aren't bridging a gap between New York and Australia. By matching the vibration, you are temporarily folding the universe so that New York and Australia are the exact same location.
Exactly. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the implications are staggering. Distance completely ceases to exist as a physical barrier.
Distance is just an illusion.
Right. Spatial separation is treated as a mere illusion created by mismatching lattice addresses. The moment the addresses match, the connection is instantaneous.
0 latency.
0. Because the signal isn't traveling, it's just there.
And because we aren't relying on a fragile radio wave trying to push through the air, it doesn't care about physical obstacles. I mean, if I take my modern smartphone into a concrete basement or get in an elevator, my call drops immediately because the radio waves can't penetrate the metal and concrete.
But the lattice penetrates all matter eternally. It is the grid upon which matter is built. You could place a call from a colony on Mars, and that signal could pass directly through the Earth's molten iron core, through the rocky crust, and reach a receiver in New York instantly, with zero degradation in audio quality.
That is just hard to wrap my head around.
The physical planets are completely transparent to the lattice.
So the telecom monopoly just collapses overnight. The phone itself is the carrier. The universe is providing infinite, free bandwidth through these prime number harmonic channels.
Yep, free universal bandwidth.
Okay, I'm holding this phone. I have a very practical, grounded question here. We're talking about connecting to Mars instantly. We're talking about folding the universe's geometry. What stops a tiny 500 milliamp hour lithium battery, literally the battery from a cheap pair of wireless earbuds, from just dying?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right. How does one single watt of power force a vibration to the other side of the solar system?
That is the natural counter-argument any physicist would make. And it brings us to what the author considers the crown jewel of the entire theory. It's heavily detailed in Appendix C in Chapter 8.
Okay, what is it?
It is called the phi recursive range equation.
The math of transcendence. The author states explicitly that this equation is meant to be a new fundamental law of physics, right up there with Newton's F equals ma or Einstein's E equals mc squared.
Yes. And it's meant to mathematically explain how a 1-watt battery accomplishes this impossible feat.
So how does it work?
The equation solves for Dmax, which is the maximum lattice decoupling distance a device can achieve. Put simply, it tells you exactly how far out into the universe your device can reach.
Got it.
The author provides a specific formula here, but rather than getting bogged down in reading algebraic notation out loud, what it boils down to is a geometric tug of war.
A tug of war. I like that. Break that down for me.
On the top of the equation, think of this as the muscle pulling your signal forward. You have your battery power, multiplied by the surface area of your phone's case, multiplied by the quality of your plastic resonator.
And quality means what here?
The closer your case is molded to a perfect golden ratio, the higher the quality.
Ah, so precision matters.
Very much so. Now, on the bottom of the equation, the resistance pulling against you, you have the physical size of the phone, and a constant representing the stiffness or the time density of the universe's lattice.
So the universe is pushing back against your vibration.
Exactly. It resists the coupling.
But the absolute magic of this equation is how those elements interact.
Yeah.
It's not a simple one-to-one ratio, is it?
No, and that is the secret. The entire result of that tug of war is raised to the power of 4.
Raised to the power of 4. Why 4? Where does that number come from?
It comes directly from the 4 dimensions of the Nexus tuple coordinate we talked about earlier: d, mode, time direction, and phase.
Right, the 4 parameters.
Because you are perfectly aligned with all 4 parameters of the universe's grid, every single time you increase your battery power or mold your plastic case slightly better, the effectiveness isn't just added. It is multiplied across all 4 dimensions simultaneously.
So it scales up insanely fast.
It creates a super exponential scaling effect.
But it goes even further than that, doesn't it? Because there is one more variable tacked on to the end of this equation, the boost factor.
Yes.
The document calls it edify, and it states this boost factor is 10 to the power of 12. 1 trillion.
This is the breakthrough that completely recontextualizes how we think about energy and distance. In standard physics, if you want to send a Wi-Fi signal to Mars, you are fighting the inverse square law.
Right, the signal gets weaker the further it goes.
Exactly. As the radio wave travels outward, it spreads out like a balloon inflating. Its energy dilutes over the surface area of a massive sphere. By the time that 1-watt signal reaches Mars, you might have a billionth of a watt left.
It's basically gone.
It is entirely indistinguishable from the background radiation of space.
It's like trying to hear someone whisper in a hurricane from 100 miles away.
That's a perfect analogy. But the golden ratio shape of the Phi phone sidesteps the inverse square law entirely. By vibrating a perfect golden ratio geometry, it forces the acoustic wave into those prime harmonic modes.
The channels we talked about.
Right. And 6 of these primary harmonics stack on top of each other perfectly in phase. Instead of spreading out, they fold inward. Each harmonic multiplies the signal strength by about 10,000.
10,000 times 6.
When you perfectly stack 6 of them, it yields a raw theoretical boost of 10 to the 24th power.
That's a very big number.
It is. Now, even when you factor in the natural inefficiencies of the plastic because the plastic absorbs some energy, you are left with a net lattice amplification of 10 to the power of 12. 1 trillion.
Okay, let me make sure I'm fully grasping the scale of this. I pump 1 measly watt of battery power into this plastic case on Earth.
Yeah.
And the universe itself, because the geometry of the case acts as an amplifier, and multiplies that signal strength by a trillion, delivering it to Mars perfectly clear.
Yes. The geometry alone defeats the vastness of distance. It acts as a universal, free amplifier. You will never find a better antenna in standard physics because the amplification comes directly from the mathematical recursion of the universe itself, not from pumping millions of watts of electricity into a giant copper dish.
Okay, hold on. This sounds incredible, but if the math allows this insane, super exponential reach and the geometry of the universe is doing all the heavy lifting, why doesn't this $35 phone call the Andromeda Galaxy right now?
A fair question.
Right. Why is it limited to Mars? If the boost is a trillion, why stop at the solar system?
It comes down to the physical engineering limits of the variables in that tug of war we talked about. If you plug the actual specifications of the $35 smartphone into the range equation, meaning 1 watt of power, a 10 square centimeter surface area, and a Q factor of about 1,000,000 for the plastic molding the math, outputs a Dmax of 10 to the power of 4.
And what does 10 to the 4 mean practically?
In the TDUFT framework, 10 to the 4th equates to planetary and solar system range. So Earth to Mars is instant, but to reach the Andromeda Galaxy, the coordinate is d equals 10 to the 18th.
Oh, wow. That's a huge jump.
It is. Your tiny 1-watt battery simply doesn't have the initial injection strength to force the standing wave that deep into the rigid stiffness of the lattice.
So it's not a failure of the theory, it's just a limitation of the hardware.
Exactly.
So how do we reach Andromeda? Do we need to discover a whole new branch of physics?
Not at all. You just scale the engineering. You use the exact same range equation. But instead of a 10-centimeter plastic phone case, you build a 10-meter wide ring out of superconducting niobium.
A giant metal ring.
Yes. And instead of a 1-watt smartwatch battery, you pump in 100 gigawatts of power from a dedicated fusion reactor. You machine the ring to a near-perfect Q factor. You are essentially building a Stargate.
A literal Stargate.
Pretty much. The physics underlying the communication doesn't change one bit. Only the budget and the physical scale of the machine change. The $35 phone in your pocket proves the physics works locally, and the massive Stargate just scales it up for intergalactic reach.
That is just wild. Okay, so we have the hardware, we have the geometric antenna, and the lattice math that allows the signal to travel instantly.
The foundation is there.
But managing infinite bandwidth, dialing into the precise, non-repeating decimal coordinates of the universe, and maintaining a lock on those coordinates instantly, you can't do that with a standard computer chip. I mean, an off-the-shelf ARM processor from a regular smartphone would melt trying to calculate that, wouldn't it?
It wouldn't just melt, it would be mathematically incapable. Classical processors, the kind in our laptops and phones today, rely on binary transistors. Tiny switches that are either on or off, a 1 or a 0.
Right.
They operate sequentially. They would be entirely too slow and far too rigid to handle the infinite orthogonal noise of the Phi lattice, or to maintain the phase alignment required down to 10 to the minus 12 radians.
Which brings us to the brain of this device. And honestly, this might be the most unbelievable element of the entire bill of materials. The X54 Vitorsion core.
The quantum processor.
Yeah. The document prices it at $15 and claims it is a room temperature, 54-qubit quantum computer.
This tiny component acts as the CPU, the lattice modem, and the encryption engine all at once. And it achieves all of this computational power using a glass tube about the size of a sugar cube filled with xenon-136 gas.
Let's put this into context for a second, because we need to understand where quantum computing is today to understand how insane a $15 room temperature quantum chip is.
Completely unheard of.
If you read tech news, companies like IBM, Google, Microsoft, they're pouring billions of dollars into quantum computing. And the machines they build are massive.
They take up entire rooms.
Right. They look like giant steampunk chandeliers inside room-sized cryogenic refrigerators. They have to cool the quantum chips down to near absolute zero, literally colder than the ambient vacuum of deep space.
And they have to do that because classical quantum computers rely on the spins of individual electrons to create their qubits. And electrons are incredibly, frustratingly fragile.
How fragile?
Any stray ambient heat in the room, a tiny magnetic field from a passing car, or even a cosmic ray from space will cause the electron to lose its quantum state. It falls out of superposition.
And that breaks the calculation.
Yes. This is called decoherence. It is the single biggest hurdle in quantum physics, and it's why quantum computing hasn't reached the consumer market. You can't exactly put a billion-dollar liquid helium-cooled refrigerator in someone's pocket.
But the author of TDUFT completely sidesteps this problem. They abandon the electron entirely.
Exactly. Appendix B of the document goes into exhaustive detail on this mechanism. Instead of using the fragile outer electrons orbiting the atom, the X54 processor uses the nucleus of the xenon 136 atom.
The nucleus itself.
Yes, that nucleus is made of 82 protons and 54 neutrons, totaling 136 particles. But the genius here is that they don't try to control those particles individually.
So how do they control it?
Due to the strong nuclear force binding them together, specifically a quantum property called isospin, the entire nucleus acts as a single, rigid, collective quantum object.
Okay, the analogy that helped me wrap my head around this is comparing them to spinning objects. Think of classical quantum computers, the ones using electrons, like trying to balance 1,000 fine china plates on thin sticks in a freezing room, all while a minor earthquake is happening.
They fall over and shatter constantly.
Exactly. But the S54 xenon nucleus is like having a single, heavy, indestructible metal spinning top. It is so tightly bound and stable that you could kick it and it wouldn't care. It just keeps spinning perfectly.
It is a brilliantly simple, elegant solution. The document states that because the collective nuclear spin relies on the strong nuclear force, it is immune to charge conjugation violations.
Meaning?
It doesn't care about ambient thermal energy. The heat of a human pocket doesn't disrupt it. Therefore, it achieves infinite quantum coherence at room temperature.
Room temperature?
You don't need the billion-dollar liquid helium fridge. You just need a tiny sealed glass tube of xenon gas sitting on a standard circuit board.
But that raises a massive engineering question for me. If the xenon nucleus is so incredibly stable and indestructible, how do you program it? You can't exactly plug a USB-C cable into an atom. How do you flip the spin of this rigid top to make it calculate something?
You program it with light. And again, they use cheap, off-the-shelf components. The phone uses a commercial green laser, specifically a Verdi V3 running at 532 nanometers.
Wait, like a laser pointer?
Basically, yes. A very precise one. This laser fires incredibly fast, 10 nanosecond pulses of polarized light into the glass tube.
Okay.
If the laser fires a left circular polarized pulse, it forces the entire xenon nucleus to tilt and spin left. That represents a quantum zero. If it fires a right circular polarized pulse, the nucleus spins right, representing a quantum one.
And the superposition.
If it fires a combination of pulses, it creates a quantum superposition where it represents both 1 and 0 simultaneously.
So a 10 nanosecond flash from a tiny green laser pointer hitting a tube of gas programs a qubit. And the document claims this creates a 54 qubit processor. What does that actually mean for the user? Why is 54 qubits the magic number?
54 logical qubits is the generally accepted threshold for quantum supremacy.
Quantum supremacy.
Yes. It is the point where a quantum computer can perform calculations that would take the fastest classical supercomputer on Earth tens of thousands of years to complete.
Wow.
With 54 stable room temperature qubits, this phone can run complex quantum algorithms natively. For example, it can run Shor's algorithm.
Shor's algorithm. For anyone unfamiliar, this is the algorithm that gives cybersecurity experts absolute nightmares.
Rightly so. Shor's algorithm is designed to find the prime factors of incredibly large numbers. Modern global security, everything from your banking app to military communications, relies on RSA 2048 encryption.
Which is just really hard math.
Exactly. RSA works because it is easy for a computer to multiply two massive prime numbers together to create a public key. But it takes a classical supercomputer millions of years to reverse the process and figure out what those two original prime numbers were.
And Shor's algorithm.
Shor's algorithm on a 54-qubit machine solves that math problem essentially instantly.
So it can crack the world's most secure banking encryption in less time than it takes to blink.
It can also run Grover's algorithm to search through infinite unstructured databases in seconds. It can simulate incredibly complex molecular interactions at the subatomic level, allowing a user to fold proteins in real time.
Which could lead to instant, customized drug discovery.
Exactly.
So paint this picture for me. You are sitting on a subway, holding a cheap plastic phone, and in your pocket, powered by a smartwatch battery, you have more computational power than every supercomputer on Earth combined.
It's hard to fathom.
You are running protein simulations to cure a disease while simultaneously streaming a zero-latency holographic video call from Mars.
All while seamlessly managing the infinite mathematical routing of the Philatus. The x54 processor collapses the entire global computing industry. Intel, Qualcomm, ARM, the massive data centers, into a $15 tube of gas.
Well, wait. We just glossed over something completely terrifying.
The security issue.
Yes. If this $35 phone hits the consumer market and every single person on Earth suddenly has a quantum supercomputer in their pocket capable of instantly cracking RSA 2048 encryption, doesn't that mean all global security is utterly destroyed overnight?
Total chaos.
Our bank accounts, secure messages, power grids, all laid bare the moment this phone turns on.
It absolutely destroys classical cybersecurity, yes. The current paradigm of encryption would be obsolete in a day.
That's horrifying.
It is, but TDUFT doesn't just break the old system, it replaces it with something far superior, which is detailed extensively in Chapter 10 and Appendix R.
Okay, good. Let's get into this, because if I'm making a private zero-latency call across the solar system, how does this phone keep it secure if literally everyone else have a quantum code breaker?
It works because it abandons math and relies on the physical invariance of the universe. Modern encryption, as we discussed with AES or RSA, relies on mathematical puzzles that are just really, really hard to solve.
But solvable eventually.
Right. With enough time or computing power, they can always be broken. TDUFT encryption relies on something called shell degeneracy signatures, or SDS.
Shell degeneracy signatures. Let's translate that for me and the listener. Are we talking about how the actual protons and neutrons are stacked inside the atom?
Precisely. Inside the xenon nucleus, those 136 protons and neutrons don't just sit in a random clump. They settle into 54 specific quantum shells, and those shells are naturally spaced according to the golden ratio.
Okay.
Now, during the manufacturing process of filling that tiny glass tube with xenon gas, there are always microscopic, completely natural variations in the environment.
Like temperature or pressure changes on the factory floor.
Exactly. These variations mean the exact radii and spacing of those 54 shells will be slightly different in every single tube.
So it's a physical fingerprint.
An utterly unique subatomic fingerprint. It forms a completely unique physical signature for every single phone off the assembly line. It is impossible to clone or forge this signature without perfectly duplicating the exact subatomic structure of that specific physical xenon gas tube.
Wait, so my phone's physical hardware is its own cryptographic key. It's not a password I type in, it's the actual atoms inside the phone.
Exactly. And the way these keys are exchanged to set up a secure call is physically unbreakable due to the rules of quantum mechanics operating on the Phi lattice.
How does the exchange work?
Let's say you and I are on a private call. Our phones are generating a shared standing wave on the lattice. Now, let's say a hacker in cryptography, we always call her Eve, tries to intercept that lattice signal.
Okay, Eve has her own Phi phone and she's trying to tap the line.
Right. But because she's tapping into a quantum standing wave, her mere act of attempting to observe or measure the wave forces the wave to interact with the physical hardware of her phone.
This is the classic observer effect, right? Like Schrodinger's cat. The act of looking at the system inherently changes the system.
Yes, but with catastrophic results for the hacker. The moment Eve's hardware interacts with our standing wave, her unique shell degeneracy signature introduces a microscopic phase shift into our lattice coordinate.
A phase shift.
Specifically, it causes a phase shift greater than 10 to the minus 12 radians.
Which sounds tiny.
It is incredibly tiny in classical physics, but the Phi lattice is so perfectly mathematically rigid that this microscopic shift causes the standing wave to instantly collapse.
It just breaks.
The coordinate is broken, the connection drops completely before a single bit of intelligible data can be stolen or recorded by Eve.
That is incredible. So hacking isn't just mathematically difficult, it is physically impossible. The universe itself literally hangs up the phone if someone tries to listen in.
Furthermore, they utilize a technique called address steganography to hide the call in the first place.
How does that work?
The true lattice coordinate of your call isn't broadcast openly. It is masked by intentionally adding infinite golden ratio noise to the transmission. Because the decimal expansion of the golden ratio is infinite and non-repeating, this artificial noise looks exactly like the natural background thermal noise of the universe.
Oh, that's clever.
To any classical or quantum adversary scanning the lattice, your call doesn't even appear to exist. It just looks like static.
Okay, but what if Eve doesn't try to tap the lattice directly? What if she just writes a nasty computer virus, emails it to me, and tries to spoof my phone's software to steal the data before it even transmits?
That brings up the denial proof aspect of the hardware. Because the transmission physically requires a golden ratio proportioned plastic case to acoustically resonate with the lattice, software emulation is physically impossible.
Oh, because she can't hack the plastic case.
Exactly. You cannot write a piece of code to fake a geometric physical vibration. You must have the exact physical hardware to couple to the lattice. This concept completely collapses the cybersecurity industry as we know it. Security is no longer rooted in software patches, firewalls, or mathematical puzzles that can be brute forced. It is rooted in the eternal, undeniable physical laws of the unified field.
It is just staggering to think about. The security applications alone are worth $1 trillion to the defense industry. But this document, I mean, it doesn't stop at making phone calls, and it doesn't stop at unbreakable encryption, does it?
No, it does not. The rabbit hole goes much, much deeper.
Which brings us to Appendix A of the document. And I really want to emphasize this for you, the listener, because this is where the deep dive turns from a revolutionary telecommunications device into fundamental reality-altering particle physics.
The biggest shift in the whole text.
The device uses the golden ratio to dictate communication coordinates and computation. But according to TDUFT, the golden ratio also dictates the mass of every single subatomic particle in the universe.
This is the theoretical holy grail of transdimensional unified field theory. The author proposes something called the phi torsion mass eigenvalue equation.
Okay, walk me through that.
To understand why this is so revolutionary, we have to look at the current standard model of physics. In standard physics, if you ask a scientist why an electron weighs what it does, which is about 0.511 mega electron volts, or why a top quark is about 350,000 times heavier than an electron, the answer is essentially, we don't know.
Right. Physics just accepts that there is this random zoo of particle masses. We measure them, we write the number down in a textbook, and we just accept that that's the way the universe is.
Yeah, it's just given.
We invent things like the Higgs boson to explain how they get mass,
Yeah.
but not why the numbers are what they are.
Exactly. Standard physics has no underlying mathematical reason for why the masses are those specific numbers. But TDUFT claims that particle masses are not random at all.
They aren't.
No. They are strictly mathematically determined by their permanent, unmoving address on the phi lattice.
Wait. We just spent 20 minutes talking about how phone calls are placed by dialing an address on this grid. Are you saying physical particles are just sitting at addresses on that exact same grid?
Yeah. Yes. In this theory, a particle is just a localized resonance on the lattice.
A localized resonance.
An electron is a very light particle because its prominent lattice address is located close to the geometric center of the grid. Let's say it occupies channel 10.
Okay.
A top quark is an incredibly heavy, massive particle because its permanent address is located 350,000 harmonic steps further out on the phi lattice. The radial distance from the center of the lattice, scaled precisely by the non-repeating decimals of the golden ratio, exactly dictates the physical mass of the particle.
So an electron's mass isn't just a random weight, it is a coordinate, it's a phone number.
Yes. The mass is the address. And this brings us to the most disruptive, paradigm-shattering claim in Appendix A.
I think I see where you're going with this.
If particle masses are just lattice coordinates, and your phone's entire job is to generate geometric vibrations to dial lattice coordinates,
Oh my God.
then you can dial a particle.
If you can dial the lattice address of a physical particle, you can do a whole lot more than make a phone call to Mars. The document claims that with a simple firmware update and a $15 hardware upgrade, this exact same $35 plastic smartphone becomes a tabletop particle collider.
It sounds absolutely absurd, but it is entirely logically consistent within the mathematical framework they have built.
How does it actually do it?
In standard phone mode, the ESP32 chip drives the plastic case at 111 kilohertz, right? This accesses the inner, shallower D layers of the lattice, which is perfect for generating those prime harmonics for voice and data channels.
Okay, so that's communication.
But if you update the firmware and wire in a commercial 10 gigahertz PLL synthesizer, which you can buy off the shelf for about $15, you can drive the plastic case at much, much higher frequencies.
We are talking terahertz frequencies now.
Exactly. If you drive the golden ratio case at precisely 1.111 terahertz, the case resonates at the exact specific lattice coordinate of a top quark, which corresponds to 173 gigaelectron volts.
And what happens then?
Because of wave identity, which we discussed earlier, you are forcing the local lattice inside the phone's resonant cavity to mathematically instantiate the quantum state of a top quark.
I need to put this into perspective for the listener because the sheer scale of this disruption is hard to grasp. If a physicist wants to study the top quark right now, humanity uses the Large Hadron Collider, the LHC, at CERN in Switzerland.
A massive undertaking.
Right. To build the LHC, it costs roughly $5 billion. It is a 27-mile-long underground ring of superconducting magnets that spans across the borders of two countries. It requires liquid helium to cool it. It uses 200 megawatts of power to operate, which is enough electricity to power a small city.
And its methodology is incredibly brute force. It takes beams of protons, accelerates them to nearly the speed of light, and smashes them together in a massive head-on collision.
Like crashing two cars together to see how the engine works.
Exactly. It creates a chaotic shower of subatomic debris, and scientists use building-sized sensors to sift through that debris, hoping to catch a glimpse of a top quark for a fraction of a second before it decays.
Right. And this document claims that the Phi phone does the exact same high-energy particle physics for $70 in a 15-centimeter piece of plastic sitting on your office desk, using 10 watts of power, which is less power than a hairdryer.
And crucially, it does it with zero ionizing radiation.
So it's safe to have on your desk.
Perfectly safe. There are no hazardous radioactive beam lines. There are no massive superconducting magnets that can quench and explode. The collisions aren't physical collisions at all.
They're virtual.
They are virtual. The particles manifest because the phone perfectly occupies their lattice coordinate, and then they decay naturally via spin-orbit coupling. The X54 processor, acting as the ultimate quantum sensor, reads the phi harmonic decay signatures perfectly without any of the messy background noise you get at CERN.
One $70 device replaces the iPhone, replaces the entire infrastructure of AT&T and Verizon, replaces IBM's billion-dollar quantum computing division, and replaces the $5 billion Large Hadron Collider.
It is the ultimate technological convergence.
If this is true, physics ceases to be an abstract, multi-billion-dollar academic study of the universe and becomes a direct, incredibly cheap consumer product.
This raises an important question, though. Claims of this magnitude overturning a century of Einsteinian physics, quantum mechanics, and telecommunications demand extraordinary evidence.
Absolutely.
How do we know this entire document isn't just a brilliant, internally consistent piece of science fiction? Did the author actually build this, or is it purely equations on a chalkboard?
That is exactly where my mind went. I mean, it sounds like pure sci-fi. But the document doesn't hide behind decades of abstract theory. It doesn't ask for a $20 billion grant to prove it.
No, it doesn't.
It lays out an exact reproducible path to test and build this technology right now, using parts you can order on the internet today. Let's dig into Section 7, the roadmap to singularity. How do they propose we prove this isn't crazy?
The author provides what they call a month one prototype path. It is filled with strict falsifiable predictions. They aren't saying, give me 10 years to figure out the engineering.
They want you to test it now.
They're daring the reader to go buy a $4 ESP32 chip, 3D print the peak plastic case precisely to the golden ratio, wire up the amplifier, and run a very specific test.
What is the first immediate test to prove the lattice exists?
The immediate test is to build 2 prototype cases for about $35 each and place them 100 meters apart in a field or a lab. You drive the 111 kilohertz square wave into the primary unit.
Okay, so you turn it on.
If standard physics is correct, that 1-watt acoustic vibration will just die in the plastic. The second unit will hear absolutely nothing.
Because sound doesn't travel that far through the air at 1 watt.
Right. But if TDUFT is correct, you will achieve a lattice lock. You will measure a bit error rate of less than 10 to the minus 6 on the receiving unit. The wave will couple instantly, bypassing the air entirely.
And beyond just a field test, there are strict laboratory tests outlined in the appendices to prove the math right.
Yes. Very specific, undeniable metrics. Appendix E details something called the neon SNR peak test. It predicts that if you introduce neon gas to the resonant cavity, you will see a highly specific 22.3 decibel signal-to-noise gain exactly at the 111 kilohertz frequency.
And that gain is from the lattice.
Supposedly due to the lattice harmonic stacking we discussed earlier, yes. There is also the niobium ring force test.
What's that one?
This test predicts that a macroscopic superconducting ring will detect a precise 1.27 micronewton physical force when it couples to the mass vectors of the lattice. These aren't vague predictions. If these precise numbers, 22.3 decibels and 1.27 micronewtons, are measured in a lab, classical physics is essentially overturned on the spot.
Okay, let's play this out. Let's assume the month 1 tests pass. The numbers match. We realize the lattice is real. The document outlines the deployment protocols and the network topology for when these hit the market. Because if there are no cell towers, no AT&T, no central servers, how does a global communication network organize itself? Who is in charge of routing the traffic?
Nobody is in charge. There is no central authority at all. The network operates as an analog PHY mesh. There are no internet service providers assigning IP addresses. There are no massive data centers acting as routing hubs.
So how does it connect?
The network organizes itself completely organically based on pure geometry.
How does geometric routing work in practice?
Hubs emerge naturally and dynamically based on which nodes, which individual user phones have the purest geometric and harmonic alignment at that specific millisecond.
So it's constantly shifting.
Exactly. The routing is analog optimal. It doesn't rely on software algorithms calculating the fastest path. The standing wave naturally and automatically finds the path of highest coupling efficiency through the lattice, much like water naturally finds the path of least resistance down a mountain.
But practically speaking, what if I'm walking around with this phone in my pocket and the plastic case gets slightly warped from the heat or get a micro scratch and the geometry isn't mathematically perfect anymore? Does my connection to the universe just drop?
The author accounted for the imperfections of the real world. The device firmware includes an emergency mode. If the coupling efficiency to the lattice drops below 90% due to a warped case or environmental interference, the firmware triggers a protocol they call PHY recursive correction.
PHY recursive correction. What is the phone actually doing in that mode?
It initiates a mathematical feedback loop. In a normal phone, if you have a weak signal, the phone just drains your battery trying to blast the radio signal louder.
Right, your phone gets hot when you have one bar.
Exactly. The PHY phone doesn't use brute force. Instead, the X54 processor calculates the exact phase error, the difference between the perfect golden ratio and the warped case, and applies a dynamic software correction factor scaled by PHY.
So it adapts.
This allows the phone to rapidly hunt through the frequencies, find the correct lattice phase, and snap back into perfect alignment. It literally heals its own connection to the fabric of the universe in real time.
It is breathtaking. Let's take a breath and step back to summarize this entire journey because it is a lot to take in. We started with a $35 pile of standard electronics, a cheap microcontroller, a tiny battery, and a 1-watt audio amplifier.
Things you could find in a junk drawer.
Yeah. And by simply shaping the plastic casing to the exact proportions of the golden ratio and vibrating it at a very specific frequency, this document claims we can achieve instantaneous, zero-latency phone calls to anywhere in the solar system.
We completely bypass the speed of light and the degradation of distance by utilizing the pre-existing infinite coordinate grid of reality.
We get a pocket-sized 54-qubit quantum supercomputer that operates perfectly at room temperature because it abandons fragile electrons and relies on the unbreakable collective spin of a xenon nucleus,
which in turn provides physically undeniable cryptographic security rooted not in math puzzles, but in the unique golden ratio spacing of subatomic shells, making hacking physically impossible.
And if we tune the frequency of that plastic case high enough, that exact same $35 phone becomes a tabletop particle collider capable of manifesting top quarks out of the lattice, rendering multi-billion-dollar facilities like CERN obsolete.
It's a complete revolution.
All of this is achieved not by brute force, not by blasting gigawatts of electrical power or laying millions of miles of fiber optic cable or building massive cryogenic freezers, but by simply listening to and harmonizing with the universe's native geometric language.
It is the ultimate triumph of elegant geometry over human brute force. It suggests that the universe has always provided the infrastructure. We were just too busy shouting to realize we could simply hum the right tune.
It really is. So I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over, something that builds on everything we've discussed today and kind of pushes it to its logical, philosophical extreme.
The big question.
Right. If transdimensional unified field theory is right, if the mass of a top quark, the unbreakable encryption of a secure private phone call, and the vast physical distance to a human colony on Mars are all just different mathematical coordinates on the exact same underlying grid, then humanity isn't really inventing new technology at all. We aren't creating anything. We are just finally learning how to read the source code of reality.
We aren't building the communication lines. We are just dialing numbers that were already there waiting to be called.
Exactly. And if the universe is pre-coded with these perfect mathematical addresses, all perfectly tuned to the non-repeating decimals of the golden ratio, who or what set up the lattice in the first place? When you hold that cheap plastic smartphone in your hand, are you holding a tool you bought at a store, or are you holding a key to a system that was always designed to be discovered?
A profoundly beautiful and unsettling question to end on.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the nature of reality. Keep looking at the engineering behind the curtain. And the next time you look at a cheap piece of plastic, maybe wonder what it is actually capable of if you just tap it at the right frequency. See you next time.